When building corporate or consulting slide decks, one of the most common things that you'll need to do is visualize forecasts. And in my many years as a management consultant and corporate strategist, I must have put together literally every type of forecast imaginable. But in this video, I'm going to share you the 3 most common and compelling ways to visualize forecasts. And I'm going to share a tip that you can use when you don't want your audience to know that you're using forecast data. So let's jump into it. The first way to visualize forecasts is to use a distinct color or a distinct shade. Now this is really obvious. As you transition from the actual data to the forecasted data, you need to transition the color. And here's what I mean. I've pulled this slide out of my business strategy and consulting template pack, which I'll link in the description below if you want to look at it. But this slide in particular shows a change in revenue growth over time. Now it's a template, so there's no real data in there. But what you can see is the 2025 to 2028 period, that's forecasted data. And it's made clear because I've changed the column color from gray to blue. I've put a light blue kind of shading in the background of the forecasted period, and I've also labeled that section with the word forecast. So the important thing is I'm making it really, really clear for the audience that, okay, we're no longer looking at actuals, we're looking at forecasted data. I think this looks really good, and I know it works very well if you have a single forecast. So as you can see, like a single data point and only one forecast. But what if you want to show multiple forecasts? And that's a good question. So you might want to show, a bull case, which is optimistic, and a bear case, which is pessimistic. In that case, we'll have to look at scenario 2. The second method of visualizing forecast is to use dashed lines. Now this one's great for showing multiple forecasts on a single chart. Like I mentioned just before, you could show a bull case and a bear case together using dashed lines. Just like the previous method, it makes it very clear that you're transitioning from actuals, which won't be dashed, to forecasts, which are dashed. And here's a great example from McKinsey. So they're showing 3 different forecasts for the volume of USPS mail. And in this example, they're comparing a forecast that was modeled by BCG in 2005 with what actually happened. And importantly, not only has McKinsey used different colors to indicate different forecasts, but they've actually changed the length of the dash. Now this is a very small, but also very important detail. And the reason is that many executives like to print out documents and review them with pen and paper, and sometimes they print in black and white. Now, if you only use color to differentiate between the different forecasts, sometimes the contrast between those colors isn't distinct enough. So when you print it out in black and white, it's really hard to identify which forecast goes with which label. However, if you alter the length of the dashes and you use a legend, then it's much clearer to identify, okay, this length dash is for this particular forecast. So as I said, this method's really clear that you're transitioning from actuals to forecasted data. But what if you don't want your audience to know that you're using forecasted data? Well, if that's the case, I have another trick for you. Now, there might be some situations where you actually don't want your audience to know that you're using forecasted data. And in that case, the 2 examples that I just showed you probably aren't fit for purpose because they purposely do highlight the clear transition from actuals to forecasts. But we can also hide it. So the sneakiest way to do this is to simply append F, E, or T to the column label of your chart. So to make this clear, let me show you this A.T. Kearney example. This slide is showing the growth of electric buses in China. And looking at the slide, you might immediately think to yourself, whoa, EV buses are growing really quickly in China. And if you look at the chart, the shape of the chart looks like a hockey stick and the CAGRs look huge, like they're 50% plus. So you can see just by looking at the chart that it's telling a really rosy story. But if you look closely at the column labels, you'll notice that everything from 2012 onwards is a forecast. Now it can be really easy to overlook that because all they've done is they've added the letter F to the column labels and the chart labels to show that there's forecasted data in the chart. And it's really difficult to see the Fs, it's quite easy to overlook, and that's the point. Kearney have consciously chosen to not change the colors in a distinct way, not indicate that it's a forecast unless you look very, very closely. So there's 3 different ways to visualize forecasts in your presentations. If you like tips like this, then you'll like the Slide Science System, which is an online course, cheat sheets, ebook, slide templates, and more that help you build compelling corporate presentations. I'll put a link in the description below.